hello everyone. Welcome to Success Stories event organized by Work on Climate. My name is Priyanka Erandi, and I'm going to be the moderator for today's session. I'm joined by Pratyusha and Leena through this event. So, Work on Climate is basically a non-profit and with a mission to make the climate work mainstream. So, through our community building, resource sharing, mentorship programs, and events like these, we want or we continuously strive to assist more and more people to get to transition into climate work. So through success stories, we bring in professionals from various climate professionals from various backgrounds. So you get to hear their climate journey, you get to ask them questions. So this is really a good opportunity for everyone who wants to enter into climate work to interact with those who are already in this space. So today we are joined by two such accomplished climate professionals, Andrew Denu and Juan Felipe Aranguren. So Andrew is a commercial lead at Andes, and which is a carbon removal startup based in San Francisco Bay Area. He spent 6 years working in East Africa, scaling new technology in solar, fintech, agriculture space, with a specific focus on smallholder farmers and voluntary carbon markets. So Juan, he joins us from Colombia. He is a founding engineer at electric mobility, micro-mobility startup Vammo. He has worked in different software companies before. He's also a founding fellow at Climate Base. His educational background is in business, and today is his birthday. So happy birthday, Juan! What a great way to celebrate your birthday by sharing your climate story with us. So we are so happy to have both of you here. I have intentionally left out some pieces in the introduction because I would like both of you to begin by telling something about yourself, your company, and how your current job is a climate job. So maybe Andrew, you can start.
Cool. Thanks everyone for joining, and thanks to the Work on Climate team. I love the work that you all are doing, and your platform is kind of the reason that I'm working at Andes today. So thanks for that. And Juan, happy birthday. Great to be on here with you. Yeah, so I can just tell you, I think, a bit about maybe what I'm working on now, and then we'll go into kind of past stuff. So Andes is a carbon removal company. We use microorganisms to remove CO2 and convert it to minerals on agricultural land, mostly in the Midwest of the US, which is where I'm from, Wisconsin. And my role is, yeah, like you said, commercial lead, which, yeah, I don't know if it necessarily fits what I would say I work on, but it's mostly working in the voluntary carbon markets. How many, I guess, if anybody wants to raise their hand if they're not familiar with the voluntary carbon markets, I can give kind of a quick overview of what that is before I like jump into, yeah. So I can, yeah, so basically the voluntary carbon markets are corporates or companies who have, you've probably seen on the news, like Microsoft has set their net zero target for 2030 or 2040, where they want to be carbon neutral or carbon negative by that date. So in order to do that, they want to decarbonize. They want to decarbonize their emissions internally, and then for the emissions that they can't decarbonize completely, they have to buy carbon credits or carbon removals to offset some of those unavoidable emissions. And so the voluntary carbon market enables companies to kind of make those claims, and all of these claims are voluntary, right? So they're not required by law to purchase carbon credits, as opposed to the compliance carbon markets, which is governments putting into place certain structures, whether that's like a cap and trade system where companies who under emit can sell their carbon credits technically, or their to other companies that are over emitting, or there's taxes on carbon. So if you over emit by a certain amount, you have to pay a tax on carbon. So those are the kind of the two markets that exist where you can buy carbon credits, is the voluntary and the compliance. And what Andes is selling their carbon removals in is the voluntary carbon markets. And so my role within Andes is to pitch the work that our team is doing to companies like Microsoft and see if they want to purchase carbon credits to help us continue to remove CO2 from the atmosphere. And the reason why, and maybe I could go into this a bit later, but the reason why we are in this position where we need to remove CO2 from the atmosphere, the IPCC, which is the big government, global agency for that's doing research on climate change, came up with, I think in 2018 or 2019, a report that said even if we completely stopped all of our emissions today, we'll still have excess CO2 in the atmosphere that we'll have to remove in a gigaton scale. So in billions and trillions of tons of CO2 that we'll have to remove by like 2050, 2040, 2050. And so this industry, some are predicting, will be as big as the whole oil and gas industry is today, the whole energy industry is today. So it's quite an exciting space, and that's kind of why I wanted to get involved in that space. And then just one quick caveat to make on carbon removal. There's a lot of articles coming out recently that might be portraying it in a bit of a negative light because some people think it might distract from the main problem that we have, or the main kind of solution that we have for climate change right now, which is decarbonizing as much as we can, switching from oil and gas to solar, that kind of stuff. But the carbon removal space is definitely necessary in the long run. Like I said, even if we fully decarbonize, but the big push and the way that we're trying to frame leaders in the carbon removal space are trying to frame this is that we need to decarbonize by 90%, period. And then separately, we need to start removing CO2 from the atmosphere today so that we can have the solutions that will scale up, a decade from now. And so you've probably heard of some of the other carbon removal companies like Climeworks, which is doing direct air capture, sucking CO2 through these fans and pumping it underground, injecting it underground into basalt rock, where it stays permanent for tens and hundreds of thousands of years. So Andes is doing one like that, a solution like that, but we're converting CO2 into carbonate minerals on agricultural soils, like I mentioned, but happy to go more into detail eventually on that, but I'll stop there.
This is great.
Juan, go for it.
Yeah, sure. Juan?
Yeah, thanks a lot, Andrew. I love the deep tech nature of it. This is pretty cool. Okay, so thanks everyone. Thank you, Bianca, and also for Work on Climate for inviting us to such a great opportunity. So quick, I'm Juan. I'm a software engineer. I'm a founding engineer working at Vammo. We're basically an electric mobility startup that is focused on South America. So this company basically began with a question: how can we electrify transportation in South America? And it turns out that we cannot just sell a bunch of Teslas or Rivians because of a couple of things. Like, first of all, this kind of cars and in general, this kind of mobility solutions are quite expensive for the economic capacity of people here. The second one, there is basically none to almost zero electric infrastructure here. And there's a third reason, which is a lot of people use motorbikes, right? Like motorbikes are the main method of transportation here in South America, and I would argue also in other places of the global South, right? Such as India, China, Africa, and so on. So we developed a way that is basically electrifying the motorbikes in South America via a battery swapping system. And what we do is basically building stations where motorbikes, well, first of all, we transform the motorbikes into electric motorcycles, where we basically equip riders with electric motorbikes, and then we place stations among cities where we have where these riders can come and can swap the used batteries for new ones. Yeah, it's really simple. It's the electric swapping. We began by having a manual o- operation where the stations are physical stations where we have the riders and then the swappers. So the riders are every person that's riding a bike. The swappers are just the guys that help to exchange the battery. Right now, we are just beginning pilots with a fully automated solutions, basically a smart cabinet where the rider is going to arrive and that person can simply send a command for a door to open where uh, they can input the used battery and then a second door is going to open where the completely new battery is going to come up. It's basically a solution like an electric solution for the context of South America. My role is, as a software engineer is basically building the entirety of the backend of that solution. First of all, the mobile apps for the writer and the swapper. And right now, it's like the backend to communicate with the smart cabinet, with the hardware.
This is amazing. Thank you both of you for the introduction. So my next question to you is, what really prompted to work in climate, specifically in climate? Juan, maybe you want to continue since you ended here.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, my breakthrough wasn't, well, it was very progressive. Like, it comes from when I was a kid. I given a great deal of thought about this, and basically, I love reading fantasy, and I fell in love with like the fantastical worlds with nature and so on. It was a really simple love. Like I loved going out to a forest, to a jungle, because that is where like the most magical stuff happened. And years after, I came to work with an organization that was working with a community, with an association of indigenous communities around the world, from the Brazilian communities and Peruvian and Colombian, focused on the Amazon, also a Congolese indigenous community for the Congo Basin, and from Thailand as well. And I began to understand about their fight, like it, they were marching in cities because something was being taken from them. I understood that they were caring and looking for their homes, which are the jungles and the rainforest, and in turns, indirectly, they were kind of helping us. Like we need these forests, and I began to understand about that fight, and that spark grew in me. And later on, when the pandemic happened, I grew tired of basically doing so few things towards something that is meaningful. I decided to look for two sectors actually for social impact. It was either climate or blockchain, crypto, in terms of maybe digital identity or democracy, right? And I later on decanted for climate because it was the most urgent and important as well. Because I was interested not only in mitigating the crisis, but actually on the chances we have of building a spectacular future. Like we can build the future we want. So that is what I aim to at my work, to build a great future.
That is great. And I can resonate with you on that, like looking at the fights from indigenous people everywhere, and the work that they contribute, knowingly or unknowingly, to keeping these forests alive for us and for the future generations. So this is great. Uh, yeah, Andrew, would you like to share like what prompted you to work on climate? I mean, of course, your background is in biology, educational background is in biology, but other than that, is there anything that you would like to share?
Yeah, yeah. One, super cool to hear your company and your story too. Um, but yeah, my path has been, I guess I have been working in climate, but I just haven't realized it. I guess the last like 7 years since I started my career, I guess. Um, my brother and mom are on the call, so I'm gonna just give them a quick shout out and say that they definitely inspired me to work on very impactful stuff. My mom's a lawyer, my brother's a doctor, working on cancer research. So definitely having them in my life like pushed me to try to work on something impactful. And it started out really with kind of the work in East Africa. So I've been working with different startups throughout the continent, mostly around agriculture, some around like financial inclusion, and then around solar. So like the main company that I've been working for I guess the past 4 years before Andy's is a company called Sun Culture, and we were selling solar water pumps to smallholder farmers. And I never really thought of it from the climate angle. I was always more focused on, basically them switching over from diesel or petrol fuel pumps to solar pumps allowed them to save money. And then if they were switching from rain-fed agriculture, it allowed them to increase their yield on the farm and grow more nutritious crops like fruits and vegetables. So I always saw it more as like community development or like, empowering communities to grow economically. But I think what changed and when I started viewing it more with a climate lens was probably a combination of a few things. The one being, I remember visiting farmers in central Kenya, and when the first year that I got there, so this was like 5 years ago, and then I revisited the same area about 4 years later, and I remember just how dried up some of the rivers were, how like desolate some of the land was looking, and how the farmers basically told me that their land and their agricultural yields were being drastically changed by climate change. And yeah, they knew, like, they were super well educated about climate change and knew exactly what was happening to them. And there was things like solar irrigation that could help basically mitigate or alleviate some of the challenges that they were having. But overall, like, there was only so much you could do, right? And so I wanted to think about other ways that we could think about kind of reversing climate change. And that's why I figured out about or started reading more about carbon removal. And then I think when the IPCC report hit in 2019, 2020, I think is when I read it, but it really just validated the fact that we need to remove, gigatons of CO2 from the atmosphere. And I started researching all these different companies that are doing CDR, carbon removal, CDR, like Heirloom and Climeworks. There's just like such incredible, innovative, elegant, I would call it like elegant solutions using a combination of nature and kind of engineered solutions. Andy's being one of those as well. And just got really fascinated by the potential to scale up some of these solutions. And personally, I like kind of more fast-paced, fast-moving companies and startups. So all of these companies are kind of at the early stages of things. So I like kind of working on different pieces within these startups. So yeah, that's how I started getting into carbon removal. I was actually looking into the refi space, or like the crypto plus carbon space as well, and considering joining some of those startups, but ended up going more with the carbon removal.
Yeah, great. So I would like to understand a little bit more about how you both approached the job search. Like, how did you approach this kind of job? How did you prepare yourself to get this job, and what kind of things really helped you to get this job, like climate job? So Andrew, maybe you can go ahead.
Yeah, sure. I think I wrote down a list of kind of how I go about it. And this might be helpful for some people, and it might just be things that you've already heard. So sorry if it's the latter, but the first thing I do is kind of think about broadly what you're interested in and broadly what your skill set is and how that could apply to different companies, right? So for me, that was I had some experience in Kenya with helping that solar irrigation company essentially scale up their carbon credit business. So I helped them work through like the registries, one called Vera, to basically get carbon credits approved for the company, and then get those credits sold to the corporates. So I had that kind of experience. And then I leveraged that to kind of get this new job with Andes, where I was interested in pivoting into the carbon removal space. But I didn't really have, the carbon removal space is engineered solutions right now, right? So it's a lot of hiring engineers and software developers and hardware developers and that kind of stuff. So I was trying to kind of find my place within that. And so I used the experience that I had in the voluntary carbon markets to kind of work my way into that. But that's to say that across all different climate businesses and nonprofits and public sector, there is definitely a role for your skill set. So yeah, I would say like first think about broadly what you're interested in and then how that skill set could be applied. And then part of figuring that out, I think, also is just researching organizations that are doing cool stuff. So what I would do is like scour the Work on Climate Slack channel, which had as the jobs posting. I would scour another climate group that I'm a part of, My Climate Journey, would scour their Slack channel. Some of you have probably heard of Climate Base. So I would basically make a list of all the different job or companies that were hiring, because if they're hiring now, they're likely, to be hiring for other roles in the future as well. So just I would make a list and then like rank the startups or companies that I wanted to work for, and then just start being like relentless about reaching out to people on LinkedIn. I'm pretty shameless about that. Maybe that's just the American in me. At least my my friends in Kenya would kind of troll me for that I was just about networking. But I do think if you go about it in the right way and are respectful and you message people on Slack through these like Work on Climate or on LinkedIn, and then if you get a job, paying it forward, right? Like learning how you can help other people, and like on this, anyone can feel free to reach out to me after this, and I can try to help wherever I can. But yeah, that's kind of the strategy that I would go for. And then also like networking in person, now that things are opening up a lot more, at least in the Bay Area. There's a lot of climate meetups kind of happening everywhere, but there's also a lot of virtual ways to connect as well.
This is great. Great points, Andrew. Thank you so much for that. Juan, how did you approach this particular job? And you are the founding engineer of this company, right? So we would also like to understand what it means to be a founding engineer in a climate startup. And so did the networking help you? How did you really find Vammo?
Sure. Right. So yeah, my approach is quite similar to Andrew, actually, because I also tend to reach out on people, to shamelessly reach out. I learned that from North Americans. And yeah, like I began first of all trying to understand about the climate scene and try to distill all these sectors that we are there. Like we have a lot of things, for example, nature-based, food and ag, energy and transport, and so on, cities and built environment. There is a lot of information there. So the first thing I did was to begin researching and trying to dive deep into the sectors, like which kind of tasks, challenges, technologies were each one of these sectors looking for and working on. And I try to distill these sectors into three, like two or three that I was most interested in. And I also began networking with professionals in the sector. At this step, I joined the climate-based fellowship. I figured out it was a really great opportunity to learn like really deep about each sector and also network with people. Um, Again, reaching out on people on LinkedIn as well, no shame. I began building connections there, and I actually found the opportunity via LinkedIn. Like, I think it's a really great tool, and I saw that there was the founder, one of the founders, was kind of like implying that he wanted to build something with purpose next. And I kind of had the hunch that this thing was a climate thing. So I kept following him for some days and weeks. And when the time came, he made actually the announcement in which he mentioned that he wanted to build something in the electric and transportation space. So basically, reach out to him and ask how can I help? Like, I have these skills, and that's how my journey began with this startup. Like, I also shared these like adrenaline for the startup world. I so that's pretty much it. And I also came up with a list of the things that I did. So the first is to distill the climate scene into two, three sectors of excitement. Like, think about what inspires you. It can be whatever, ag, nature-based, right? The second one is network. Like, try to network a lot, remote if you can, or like in person, which is really good. Also reaching out to people, and finally learn. Just learn about the thing that you want to do. It's not an absolute requisite job. Like, climate companies need a lot of software engineers and product managers and people in sales, in operation, and the nature of that work is the same as if you were working on any kind of company. But like, it is great if you understand why. Like, why is this company doing what it does? Like, what's the impact, what's the purpose, and what will the future look like when you succeed? So yeah.
Thank you so much for that. So I have talked to so many professionals, over last few months through success stories, and the purpose is something that everybody shares or mentions about. So this is a common thread in climate, which I really like. That a good purpose and impact that we achieve through our work in climate. So moving on to a certain though climate work is good, it is purposeful, but there are still some misconception in people's mind. So did you come across any of such misconception, and how would you rather clear it up in front of our audience today, so that if they hear about something like that, they know that this is certainly not true about working in climate. One.
Yeah, yeah, it's a really good question. I'll speak here just from my role as a software engineer, right? So I would say that you don't need to do a master's or to specialize in order to work in climate. Like, there is no such thing as a climate software engineer. Yeah, yeah, there are software engineers working on climate, right? So you apply a lot, if not all of these skills you currently have to a solution that, well, it's noble, it has purpose, but you are still applying the skills you acquired working on previous companies on other kind of sectors. So that's my main one. The- Uh, you can, of course, research about climate, as I mentioned, like trying to understand about the why and your why. But a lot of talent that climate tech companies and organizations look for are are not overly specialized talent. Like, you can definitely break into climate with what you know.
Andrew.
Yeah, yeah, I'd agree there. Totally. I mean, think about like for the carbon removal industry, for example, um, everybody like a large chunk of the um, experts in oil and gas um, will need, like, could be end up being a good fit, and I think need to be a good fit for, let's say, scaling up massive infrastructure, direct air capture plants, right? We're going to have these DAC hubs, or direct air capture hubs, that the US government is funding. And so, like, yeah, I think there's a bit of a conception that, like, well, at least this might be more of my personal opinion, but that, like, we can just do away with the oil and gas industry completely, and it'll just completely go away and quietly, right? And obviously, I mean, definitely in the US, that's not the case. So, like, figuring out a way that we can give oil and gas a way out by enabling the scale up of jobs, and those jobs within carbon removal, within you know, energy, batteries, what Juan's working on, everything. Like he said, there's going to be need for every single type of person, every single type of skill set, engineers, business people, sustainability people, all across the board. So I think, and the cool part about, I think, the climate industry that I've seen so far is that people are incredibly willing to help out with each other. I've never experienced a similar industry or sector where people are so willing to connect to other people doing cool stuff in the space. And I think it just goes to show, like, the urgency that people are realizing that we need to get on this immediately. And yeah, it's cool to see. There are a lot of misconceptions, I think, floating around on certain topics. For example, like the voluntary carbon markets sometimes gets a bad rap with videos like John Oliver did a video on the voluntary carbon market that you can check online, which is quite critical of that whole industry, and definitely points out some good points where, you know, we could be, the voluntary carbon market is not benefiting communities enough, or it's not accurately accounting for the amount of tons of CO2 that would actually be avoided or removed. But sometimes I think what's missed there is a bit of the nuance of how things actually are on the ground. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of misconceptions on that side. I think you're asking more about misconceptions about working in the climate space, but
Yeah, more like a
yeah,
job
I think
wise,
it's
like,
important. Oh, what job
because
wise? Yeah.
yeah, because many people otherwise think, like, salary wise, if it's a good option, work hours or work culture wise, whether it's a good option or not, and some things around that. But anyway, thank you so much for the answer. And maybe uh, some of the points that you mentioned here in the misconception already answer my next question. But if you would like to add anything, please do so. So my next question is, you've worked in the non-climate and climate space now. So what commonalities or differences that you have seen in your previous jobs and this job? How is it same and how is it different? So to get a sense of what it is to be a working professional in the climate space, basically.
Yeah, I
Okay.
mean,
Oh, sorry.
oh,
Yeah,
go
yeah,
ahead,
go
Juan.
on. Okay, then, yeah, thank you. So I make a list. It's basically, well, first of all, the differences, the obvious ones. I think is, for example, there is a huge sense of purpose, like, which affects the culture of the company. I've seen this. It's really interesting. Like, people are not just for your resume, for the money, in which I would also add lots of climate tech startups pay really well. And the culture feels very friendly. Like, we are in it for a goal that is long term, that is noble. So that's really interesting, and it's different from, you could say, regular companies, sort of companies. Also, I would say sometimes, or a lot of times, the nature of the work is actually interesting. Like, you are no longer, I don't know, I'm just going to shout out some random thing, like selling insurance or optimizing ads. Yeah, like, that serves a purpose, but when you're working on climate, you realize that what you do is really interesting and it serves a purpose. So take, for example, the case of Andes. You guys are really into deep tech, so it's really interesting to know about this science and about the impact that you're making on site. And so that also is a huge motivator. And some similarities, well, I didn't find a lot, to be honest, but I think, for example, the tools that we use, the communication tools, the software stack is pretty similar. And also some processes, for example, Scrum processes, and you sometimes, or a lot of times, also need to product manage. So the similarities are mostly like operationally speaking.
Yeah, not too much to add there, but those are great points, Juan. So I think you covered most of it. I would say agreed with you on like the culture. Just yeah, it seems like everybody's a bit more motivated, and rightfully so, to push progress, which sometimes can also add tension, right? I think in every workplace, it's not every climate job is going to be perfect, and there's things that come up within offices and whatever, right? But it's not like, yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, we're working with people and industries and companies and nonprofits and government. So it is, I think, actually more similar than you might expect. But in general, I do feel like that sense of, this is big, this problem is bigger than us, so we need to push as much as we can, and yeah, put in that work. And there is, I think, amongst like startup founders within climate tech startups that I've looked at and spoken to some of the founders of, it seems like there is more of a intrinsic motivation, or the motivation is more around the climate than it is around making money. Of course, I mean, there are, um, most of these startups are getting money from venture capitalists who, at the end of the day, are looking for money, a return on their investment. But um, they do think, and they see, lower carbon capital, I think, does an interesting and a good job of talking about how, yeah, how they, um, the CEO, you can research a video of him talking about it, but he's basically like, yeah, I think this is the best way to make money for the next couple decades. So I think it's quite interesting that some people are definitely looking at it from a making money standpoint, but I think the majority of people that I've met, at least, are yeah, mostly in it for the climate, or for both. You can be in it for both as well.
Right, completely agree there. So you and Juan both mentioned like work on climate. You are the community members at work on climate, but we would like to understand in terms of your job search, did work on climate play any role? You did hint hint at that in the beginning, Andrew, but did it, so I'm still asking, so did it play any role? And if not, did any other communities play the role in finding your climate job? And also sometimes it can happen that you get lost in the community space. There are a lot of messages, a lot of things happening. And how did you find, or how did you focus on getting information or extracting good information out of those communities that helped you?
Yeah, yeah, it's a good point. I think it can be overwhelming, actually. Um, and so you kind of got to monitor. I mean, just do what makes sense for you, right? For me, it was like checking, spending 10 minutes or 15 minutes a day checking the work on climate job posting, and then checking other job posting sites. And so I wasn't overwhelmed. I would do research kind of on those companies and get excited about different ones. And for me, I found it through this. Lena, who's on the call, she does some work on climate, but she posted about the Andes job. And I just reached out to her, and then she said, great, let's set up an interview with someone from the team. And then I had a couple interviews and got that way. So yeah, the DMs on Work on Climate and on these other Slack channels, they actually work. So I would highly recommend yeah, doing that. I really like yeah, just trying to have connections with people. Like the My Climate Journey group also does these like Wednesday coffee hour chats, where basically you can opt into a Wednesday coffee chat with a random person from the group, and they'll, I think, automatically, or maybe they select two people that they think could have an interesting conversation, and then you just have a 30-minute virtual call, share experiences, share what you're interested in working on, and maybe there could be some kind of connection or help that you could provide each other, or at least just stay in touch. But yeah, had a good experience with Work on Climate. So thank you all who work on that.
Thank you so much. Ron, would you like to add how communities helped or how you can
Sure.
maximize the use of communities?
Mhm. First of all, I agree a lot with Andrew's take. Like, if I would just add that maybe before diving deep into this kind of community, it's important that you come a bit prepared. Say you understand what kind of role you are looking and what kind of sectors the companies you would want to work with. Like that. These are the some two important things to have clear. What I did was I began also looking for opportunities in the software engineering space. I was more interested in the backend side, so that is what I looked for. I searched for keywords, for example, for sectors. At that time, I was interested in food and ag, energy, and also built environment. So I like try to search for keywords on sort of opportunities, panels, and basically whatever there. Um, I think it was really useful for me because via work climate, I think I found about climate base. And later on in climate base, I found about the fellowship. That is how I got into. I also found a lot of help with refining my LinkedIn resume. The LinkedIn in particular was really useful because, as I mentioned, via LinkedIn, I found my current job. So it was really great. I also came to know a lot of people there. I met with a Colombian guy who is also looking for climate. I think he already did it. Like he already broke into climate. So that was really great. That's pretty much it. Yeah.
Thank you so much. So, uh, last question in this discussion from our side is, uh, what advice, parting advice, would you like to give to fellow audience here who's actively seeking job in climate, and what some of the common mistakes that they can avoid while applying for the job or looking for the job? One.
Okay. Yeah. I came here with four pieces of advice mostly. First of all is always stay optimist, like both with your job search and also with the fact that we can fix this and build a great future. The second one is kind of do your homework and find some sectors that inspire you, right? What I've been mentioning before, try to filter out into two or three and look inside those. You'll be actually surprised to find out about what is being built on your city, your country, your neighborhood. So just do a bit of research there. The third one is kind of like in line with what Andrew mentioned about what that brings you joy. It's a concept that I found which is really interesting. It's called the climate ikigai. Those of you that don't know, ikigai is a Japanese concept in which the goal is for you to find your purpose. Climate ikigai is just adapted to climate, and it's basically divided into three like questions. First of all, what brings you joy? The second, what are you good at? And the third one is what works needs doing. On the center of it is your ikigai, your passion, your purpose. So you can ask yourself those kind of questions to understand on what can you work on and what actually inspires you. And the fourth one is, I named it Embrace Climate Diversity and Learn about it. Basically, this might be a hot take, but we kind of tend to always form silos. And I've seen that there is a lot of belief that climate can be reduced to venture capital and startups, and that's it. But in reality, there is more to it. Like, we have also indigenous associations working on it. We have the public sector with a lot of internal initiatives and really interesting projects. And you also have NGOs working on it. So my take here is to kind of learn about what is being built around there, go beyond startups, right? Because you never know, any of us might end up working for the government or for a different kind of collective that's doing really awesome work, but it cannot be quite categorized inside the like venture-backed startup. So yeah, just keep your eyes open for any kind of opportunity. Yeah, sorry,
Yeah.
and also about things like any common mistake, maybe, is related to knowing your sectors of interest. Like, don't like try to avoid sending myriads of job applications to any sort of climate startup or organization. Try to filter and try to be really specific, because it's important when you also want to reach out to key members inside these or organizations or companies. So be specific and use your time wisely.
Yeah,
Great.
that's great. That's incredible. I don't have much to add there, honestly. But I saw a couple chat questions in the chat that I could answer on my side.
Sure.
Would
Go
that
ahead.
work, or did you want
Yeah.
to?
Go ahead.
Okay. So one person asked about, well, actually, first, there's one thing I would add to that is about learning about different climate solutions, not only within your sector. I think I definitely agree with Juan, like go deep into the sector that you're interested in, whether that's batteries or carbon removal or whatever. Yeah, and go deep and try to learn as much as you can about those as you're networking, because then, when you start applying for jobs, even if you don't have to necessarily be, let's say, the technical person or the business person, it's good to understand that industry from all angles. And one way to get broad information, which I think is also important, is to learn from the different, learn about different climate solutions and climate challenges. One thing that I just put it in the chat, is the Climate Tech VC newsletter. They have a really good newsletter that goes out, I think, like every couple of days, that has has a deep dive on one specific topic. So I would definitely recommend that. And it shows like all the different companies that are raising money, and yeah, it's a great resource. In terms of somebody asked questions about like an advanced degree, I might be a little bit biased because I never did a master's or PhD, but I think it's not totally necessary. I think it could help definitely for some of the more technical jobs. But for example, in the carbon removal space, which is this brand new industry within the last, let's say, 2 to 3 years, there's no quote unquote experts in the field that have been around for 5 years or more that have been studying carbon removal or working in carbon removal. So like literally everybody's new. So you can't really, there's no PhD in carbon removal. So I don't necessarily think you'll be limited if you don't have a degree, or an advanced degree, but it could definitely help depending on the type of role if you want to get into something more technical. But I kind of feel like you can learn a lot of that stuff through some of these online courses. And then somebody asked about do's and don'ts on LinkedIn. Number one for me is try to get a warm introduction from somebody that you have in common with them on LinkedIn. So if you see someone that you want to connect with, and then you have 3 mutual friends on LinkedIn, try to see if one of those 3 can introduce you to that person. If not, definitely just cold reach out to them on LinkedIn. but include a message or a note that has kind of one way to relate to them. So something that you've seen them talk about, or have you seen them on a webinar? What did you like that they said? And then two, kind of what's your specific ask? Potentially you could include that within that note as well. Yeah, so those are kind of two questions that I saw in the chat, but happy to if there's any more.
Oh, yeah. So while people are thinking or might be thinking about asking questions, one last thing I would like to ask both of you, are your companies hiring, and are there any open jobs for the audience here?
Yeah, well, regarding Vammo, we instituted a hiring freeze a bit ago, yeah, due to all the craziness, but we're going to resume hiring on starting September, mostly for marketing, operations, and software roles, based in the American continent. I mean Canada, United States, and the entirety of South America. So basically, yeah, in marketing, sales in software is divided between full stack and backend roles. So that's it. You call me on LinkedIn or send me a chat. I'm really happy to chat and talk more about Vammo, the opportunities there, and also about anything you want regarding climate
This
and
is
tips,
great.
of course.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, same for me as Juan. We're hiring for one role, a senior biogeochemist. Quite specific, but if anyone has anyone in their network that has that experience, we'd love to connect. Otherwise, we should be hiring again within the next couple months. So definitely keep in touch, and we're looking for people on the commercial side to kind of join my team, and that's kind of a combination of like policy work and working within the voluntary carbon markets with buyers. So definitely, if people are interested in that, maybe not in the immediate near term, but definitely eventually. And yeah, happy to take LinkedIn messages or yeah, set up meetings or calls with people as well.
This is great. Thank you so much, Andrew. Let's open it up for any audience question. If you would like to ask them yourself, please unmute yourself and go ahead.
Hey, thank you for doing this panel. It's great to hear from both of you. I think I've learned a lot. One thing that you said, but I didn't write down properly, was you said there was a random intro Wednesday. Was that through the MCJ community? Which one was that through?
Yeah, that was MCJ. They have like coffee chats, or they call it like roulette coffee chat. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, I'm excited to check that out. Just wanted to make sure I had that information right.
Cool. Thanks for joining. I like your background.
Thank you.
Anybody else? You can always connect with Andrew. Oh, go ahead, Shirley.
That's my mom. I think she's trying to figure out how Zoom works. So don't worry about her. No, I'm just kidding.
I think we all are.
All right. So if you have any questions, you can reach out to Juan or Andrew on their LinkedIn or on our Slack community. So before we leave, I am going to share a link to the survey, and I really want you all to spend a couple of minutes here and provide us the feedback. I hope you can you all can see the screen, right? All right, so please go ahead and let us know. Let's take a few minutes. And then we'll conclude.
Hi, hello, hi. Somebody can hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, I have a question. Actually, I would like to know more about if you guys know something, some jobs related in finance regarding climate change and, well, everything related to that.
Yeah. Juan can maybe comment on the crypto side of things, but on the let's say for sure on the voluntary carbon market side, these are basically structuring long-term offtake agreements with corporate buyers. And for each of these deals, you know, we're building financial models to basically project out how much, you know, revenue per ton of carbon moved, and looking at cost structures, and it's a lot of finance. And obviously all the startups, all these companies have, you know, their finances internally that they have to work on, and need folks with finance expertise and experience. But definitely within my space, it's super helpful to have people with finance experience. And then on like the crypto plus carbon side, there's also a lot of good opportunities there. I don't know if you're interested on that side of things, Alejandro, but Juan could probably talk a little bit more about that if you wanted to.
Yeah, sure. Now, specifically regarding the crypto sector, yeah, there's definitely a lot of projects working on the refi side. I know, for example, Toucan protocol, and there are way more. Now, I don't remember all the names, but are mostly working on the voluntary carbon space and trying to verify carbon offsets, like storing in the blockchain, and there are specifically blockchain-based solutions for carbon. Now, just give me a second. I'm going to share something here in the chat. Yeah, there is a newsletter that I'm subscribed to. It's really great. It talks about all things refi for climate. It is called Refi DAO. I can't find the link here, but it basically centralizes all the news and major updates on the refi sustainability space. So you can check that out. Just give me a second. I'm trying to find it.
Yeah, there's a lot of good companies working in that space. Thalo is one that I've worked with before. THALO. Flow Carbon is doing some work there. Open Forest Protocol. Mercy Core Ventures. These are some of the ones that I know about that are doing some good work in the refi space. But yeah, this link should have more that Juan's sharing. Resources that you could recommend: deep dive carbon credit market. There's so many. Let me think about. Let me just try to find the best one. There's like this ultimate guide to voluntary markets. That's pretty good. I just shared in the thing. The McKinsey report is pretty good, honestly, as well. I'll share that here. But yeah, if you Google, voluntary carbon markets, there should be a lot of info. One that I really like following, let me just find the, it's like a YouTube channel. One for carbon removal, if you're interested specifically in carbon removal, is called Open Air. They do some really good podcasts about carbon removal. I'll share the YouTube channel here. Yeah, Frontier Climate. That's a really interesting group of organizations like Facebook, Stripe, JP Morgan, and one other, McKinsey, who are buying carbon removal.
Yeah, it's important to mention that the intersection between finance and climate goes beyond crypto, right? So you're going to find a lot of projects that are working specifically in finance, say sustainable finance or regenerative finance. The Frontier is an interesting example, basically like a market maker, like a fund that creates the demand, like funds the demand for carbon removal solutions, right? And it's basically using money to foster the creation of new industries. There's a lot you may find there.
Yeah.
In that rabbit hole. Yeah.
Yeah. Not even just for the carbon markets, but also like financing projects, right? Massive infrastructure projects that will scale up. Solar, all of that needs project finance, equity investment, blended financing capital. There's so much, like everything in climate has to be funded, right? So how to tap government sources of funding as well, the IRA and the infrastructure bill in the US, which is funding a lot of different climate solutions. There's just like going to be so many finance people needing to come into the climate space. So
awesome, because there's a lot of things that like not all the people know, like ESG companies, banks working in environmental projects and everything related to that. Like trying to trade different companies that are public and are working in the climate atmosphere. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, there's also, Alejandro, there's also, for example, companies that help individuals and companies invest into climate projects. So, and one which is called REN, but there are a huge bunch.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
But basically take the money from individuals and company and redirect it to projects. It can be whatever, like climate capture or planting or mineralization, well, which is capture, but also fostering communities around the world. So it's really also interesting and of course also related to finance. So there's a huge world out there.
All right. Thank you very much indeed.
All right.
Thank you, Andrew.
Everyone.
Thank you, Juan. Thank you so much for spending time with us today. I know we are 8 minutes over our time. So thank you so much. I learned a great deal of stuff. You shared so many useful links and resources with us. It's great. So thank you once again. And thank you everyone in the audience for joining. Have a great rest of your week. Thank you and bye-bye.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you so much,
Bye.
everyone.